the only thing that holds me back from saying Lando is well in this championship fight is weekends like this,
Yeah.
where he's just a little bit off. There's just something a little bit wrong the whole weekend, and it causes him to miss out on 3 points, say, this weekend after.
Hello and welcome back to the Counter Sports Formula One podcast. I am Darren Timson, joined as always by Liam Grice. Liam, how are you doing today?
I'm good. A relatively okay weekend sporting wise for me, so I'm happy.
Well, it's a bank holiday weekend as well, so you can't put all your hopes and dreams into just the football on Easter weekend, I don't think.
No.
Well, we've been away. We've not done one of these F1 podcasts in a couple of weeks now since the Chinese Grand Prix, and a couple of things has happened, Liam. Piastri's won 3 times.
Yep.
Max won in Suzuka.
Yep.
And it's Ferrari got their first podium. Most of that did happen at Saudi Arabia. Piastri obviously won the race there. Max was on pole. Lando absolutely fucked it in qualifying and had to come from 10th, and then was helped by Yuki taking out Gasly. Sorry, Lando fans, I just had to slip that one in there. Saw a post the other day that said, "Oh, Lando was on for the win." No, he wasn't. I suppose that's where we have to start, though, isn't it? Because at the start of the season, Lando won the first race, and we both said that Piastri looked quicker, but then the rain came, and he span out and ended up not finishing in a particularly good position. And we both said at the time that he can't let that be disastrous for him in this season if he really wants to push Lando. 4 races later, and he's 10 points ahead of Lando with 3 race wins.
Yeah, I certainly took our advice, which is nice to see. Thanks for listening, Oscar. But no, it just proves, I think, what a lot of people thought was that Oscar has developed immensely since that first season. He's definitely Lando's equal, if not, some would say a bit better in that McLaren, and them two are top of the championship right now. You know, as you said, Oscar's 10 points clear, but that gap's nothing in F1 when a race can change as quickly as it does. But full credit to him, like you said, 3 race wins now. Really, really come on leaps and bounds, which is brilliant to see. And despite qualifying second, was able to sort of get that win. I know we had the first corner palaver, which if I get into too much, the YouTube video will get demonetized, so I'm not really gonna. But it's racing, it happens. I'm sure karma will balance itself out and something will go the other way across the course of a season, because that tends to be how it works in F1, which is why we love it so much. You never know what's going to happen. But, got the win pretty convincingly, I think you can say. I mean, he was only 3 seconds ahead of Max, but didn't look like not winning the whole race. And yeah, he's proven now he can not just start from pole and win, but I say come from behind. It was only 1 place, but come from behind and win as well. So full credit to Oscar for really taking advantage of a Lando slip up, like you said, in qualifying and getting his 3rd race win of the season.
I take it. I think I know where you're going with the penalty. The only thing I'm really going to add with it, though, is I suppose whatever your feelings are, I just feel like Max and Red Bull should have just given the place back immediately.
Yeah.
And then because I throughout the race, I was really struggling to figure out if one was significantly faster than the other, and I'm actually not sure. I think they were pretty equal, and I just think Max and Red Bull let their emotions get ahead of them a little bit in that whole incident, because obviously he believes that he shouldn't have been penalized, and I think that's fine. But just give the place back because you know how the FA is going to rule it. You knew he was going to get a penalty there. So I don't know. Do you agree with that?
I I think there's been a lot of examples of first lap incidents, especially first corner incidents,
Mm,
that the FIA tend to sort of put down as racing incidents because, I mean,
mm.
especially at Saudi Arabia, when the first corner creeps up on you so quickly
Yeah,
off
and
the
it's basically a
grid.
90-degree angle.
Yeah, we've seen it at Saudi Arabia a lot
Mm,
since it came to the calendar, where people have gone too wide into that corner and the car on the outside hasn't been given enough room to enter the track safely, so he's been forced to veer off, and whether he gets the position or not has
mm,
crossed the side of the track. And at any other point in the race, I think even the second lap, I don't think we'd be having this conversation because yeah, he did cut the corner. I'm not
mm,
that deluded to say he didn't, but I also think there was not enough room to safely avoid hitting Oscar
mm,
and stay within the racing lines. I think they were pretty level from what I remember going into that first
mm,
corner. So Max will argue he had the apex. Oscar will argue I was on the inside. I had the apex. It's all he said sort of thing. But
mm,
at the end of the day, it's a first lap contact that hasn't resulted in any damage for either car.
mm,
Maybe resulted in damage for Max because he went over the sausage curves. We don't know. I doubt it, considering he was only 2.8 behind Oscar in the end. But didn't result in any severe damage. Didn't cause anybody to drastically lose positions.
mm,
So in my opinion, and maybe it is slightly biased, they were a little bit harsh in awarding
mm,
the penalty. But then I can also see the side of it where I do agree. Red Bull should have just given the position back. Like you said, Max and Oscar seemed pretty level on pace throughout the race, and if Max just had that clean go at him without the they've
mm,
given me a penalty, blah, 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 he's pushing too hard, he's going a bit deep in corners, that costs him time, then
mm.
maybe he could have won. If buts and maybes, that's all what Formula One's about. But yeah, I think they were maybe a little bit harsh in awarding the penalty, but I can also definitely see why they've given it.
Yeah, suppose the worst part for me is just like, moments later, Yuki and Gasly have that crash, and then it's
Yeah,
immediately a safety car, and you just feel like if Max was second, then he probably would have taken the lead anyway in the next
yeah.
couple of laps. But with that DRS advantage that Saudi Arabia does seem to give, I don't know. To be honest, for me, I thought the more scandalous decision was the Lawson one. I don't understand why he was given a 10-second penalty there. I thought that was a bit crazy, considering that Max's was only a 5, and I thought Lawson's was nowhere near as bad as that. Um, but anyway, on Piastri though, again, like, so obviously Max won in Suzuka, and everyone was kind of like, oh, maybe Red Bull are better than we think, or is it just Max? Doesn't have the greatest race in Bahrain, Red Bull, but then they come back in Saudi Arabia and they look decent. Does it look like it's going to be between Piastri and Max for you this season, or do you still have faith that Lando will pull this back?
I mean, I hope he doesn't. From a Red Bull perspective, I think it's a three-way fight. Personally, I think it
Mm.
is the two McLarens and Max, which seems to give me and probably a lot of people PTSD from the Ham Verbot days. But this one seems to be a bit more even. You've got Oscar and Lando in definitely the quickest car on the grid and are using that pace effectively and getting podiums and race wins.
Mm.
Both of them are, unlike a certain Finnish man back in the day. And then you've got Max, who is in the weaker car, but is probably the best driver out of the three, so he's able to extract more performance out of that car and sort of level the playing field.
Mm.
So, I mean, if they want to keep going toe to toe for the rest of the season. I don't think many of us are going to complain if we keep getting these close battles between them all.
Mm,
And I mean, we've spoken about it a lot, and the only thing that holds me back from saying Lando is well in this championship fight is weekends like this,
yeah.
where he's just a little bit off. There's just something a little bit wrong the whole weekend, and it causes him to miss out on 3 points, say,
Mm,
this weekend after losing the podium to Charles, or last week where he finished third behind Russell, even though Oscar won. That's another 3 points that he's missing out on. They may seem insignificant now, those 3 points, but they definitely add up over the course of the season. And especially in races like Bahrain, where Max was down in sixth, if Lando really wants to take advantage of slip ups from Max,
mm,
he has to be winning those races. And
mm,
on the flip side of that, Oscar is doing that, which
yeah.
personally makes me believe and we've spoken about it privately, he's the number one at McLaren who has the best shot at this drivers' championship this season against
Mm,
Max, and hopefully Zach Brown realizes sooner rather than later that it's not Lando who's got the best chance, but it's Oscar.
yeah. And I mean, we're coming up to Miami next as well, where the McLaren looks. That was kind of the turning point last season,
Yeah,
really, wasn't it, Miami? And it'll be interesting to see if they're still the quickest car around that circuit, because if they are, I'd imagine Piastri would probably win that one as well, which would then be potentially three in a row for him and no wins for Norris since the first round. But the biggest thing for me, and I'm sure you might agree with this as well, is the mentality between the two drivers. When you listen to Piastri or when you watch him race, he's never really that flustered. I mean,
yeah,
the only really time I've heard it was when he was coming up to the back markers in Saudi Arabia, and he was just kind of saying like, can these guys just get out the way? Obviously, because there's always that max threat behind him. But he's not coming out after the end of the race if he makes a mistake and sort of whining about it as some other drivers might do. He's
names. We want
mm,
names.
he makes a mistake and he's just kind of like, yeah, I made a mistake. We'll
My
move on.
bad. Yeah,
Yeah. And he puts in a strong performance again. Like, Australia, some might argue that, he was at fault. I don't really think he was at fault for that spin. I think it was just the conditions and being on slicks. But then he backs it up by winning in China the next race.
yeah,
I just think he's showing that he's got that mentality to win this championship or at least to take it to Max. Whereas I just look at Lando and, when he crashes in qualifying, it's just really down and it's like, oh, I fucked up and, blah, 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 blah. Whereas
yeah.
Piastri is just like, fuck it, it happened. I'm going to win the next race anyway. So who the fuck cares? Yeah, I think you might agree with that.
His mentality impresses me a lot more. The way he comes across in interviews,
Hmm.
he's less putting on a performance, if you
Yeah.
like. Oscar's very just straight shooting. Like, yeah, I had a decent qualified third. Would have preferred to be
Yeah.
first, but that's how it is. I still think I can win the race, which is World Driver Championship
Hmm.
mentality. That's exactly what you need. You can't be satisfied with anything less
Yeah.
than first place over the course of the season, and we've seen that with Max, and sometimes Max gets ostracized a little bit for being blunt,
Hmm.
as people call it. I just call it being Dutch because that's what Dutch people are like, and some people like it, some people don't. And Oscar's sort of got that as well. He's got the I really couldn't care less what Sky Sports or Viva Play are going to ask me in this press
Hmm.
conference. I want to win races. I want to win this championship. That's the mentality I've got, and
Hmm.
that's if he keeps that going over the course of the season and doesn't let little wobbles like Australia
Hmm.
affect him, which it seems like they're not.
Yeah.
Why can't he win the championship?
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be interesting to see how the next few races unfold because obviously the big one really is Monaco. That's in 3 races time, really. And by that point, if he just qualifies first, you know who's winning that race. So
Yeah.
he might have a significant lead over us over Norris by that point. I think we may as well talk about Ferrari now, getting their first podium at Saudi Arabia. And to be fair to Leclerc, they didn't look too far off. They looked really strong on those hard tires. But it does potentially look like they'll be good at some races and not so good at other races.
Typical Ferrari. I don't know if you saw the quote, which doesn't really bode well for Ferrari for the rest of the season. But Lewis said he'd need a brain transplant
I did see that one,
um,
yeah.
to get used to the Ferrari, which that's not too good when a seven-time world champion is questioning the ability of the car you've spent months, if not years, developing. But regs change next year, Lewis. It's fine. Ferrari should be okay. But no, I mean, look at the positives for them. Like you said, first podium. Charles proving that this is still his team,
Mm,
despite Lewis joining, which is sort of nice to see. I sort of worried coming into the season whether Ferrari would sort of just bail on Charles as
mm,
their front man, as he's been for so many years,
yeah.
because you you can't really ignore a name as big as Lewis Hamilton joining your team. But to be fair to them, they haven't. Charles has proved his worth tenfold. Podium, Saudi Arabia, like you said, strong pace there. Will it translate to Miami? I'm not too sure. Ferrari are. This is. I'm gonna do a football analogy now. Ferrari are the Spurs of F1. They're the most consistently inconsistent team on the grid. Some races they'll look really good,
Mm,
like China until they decided to have an illegal car, and then some races they'll just completely fall off a grid. Fall off a grid. That
yeah.
works. F1 pun. And it's frustrating because we see Ferrari as this team with massive heritage and want them to be fighting for world championships and fighting for wins. And in an ideal
Mm,
world, they're right up there with the two McLarens and Max. But I think those three are just in a group of their own at the moment. They're in a bubble, and then it's
mm,
sort of the Mercs and the Ferraris and for some reason the Alpines who have had a really brilliant start to the season. So
yeah.
yeah, the fourth to 10th battle for me is one of the most interesting aspects of every race because you can sort of guess those three are going to be on the podium. Those three being
Mm.
Lando, Oscar, and Max, and then it's just whoever can get in that top 10. That's really interesting for me. And if Ferrari can be best of the rest this season, despite what Lewis has been saying about the car, I think that's going to be a pretty successful season for them.
Yeah, but I suppose the worry for me with Hamilton was, Leclerc finished on the podium. Norris was chasing him down at the end. But Lewis not being able to get past Antonelli was a bit of a worry for me. And
Mm.
is it going to be a situation now where Lewis is going to cost Ferrari in races? I don't think so, but it's worth the conversation. But yeah, I think you're right, and I just think that it we all want to see Ferrari be up there, but it's looking like they're just not, which is a shame. What is interesting though is that battle between them and Mercedes because I still kind of think Mercedes are ahead at times, but then Norris Russell will have his issues that he had towards the back end of the race, and
Yeah.
Leclerc was just able to really put some distance between the pair of them, but Russell started the race well, so that's what the interesting thing is there. But then again, on points, like Norris is only 26 behind Piastri, so if results go for him, suddenly the standings look very different there.
It is very tight,
Yeah,
which is brilliant to see.
which which is what we wanted, but it's probably a little bit more predictable at the
Yeah.
minute than I think we're also hoping for. But yeah, thoughts quickly on Mercedes. Obviously, Antonelli finishing ahead of Lewis was massive for him. Russell probably would have been on for a podium if his tires just didn't die. So,
Yeah. Well, Merck's second in the constructors now, ahead of Red Bull. I do expect that to change, if Yuki Tsunoda can stop barreling into the back of cars, because he has shown at times, not maybe consistently, but at little moments, he's got pace in that Red Bull, which is nice to see. But Merck are very consistently picking up those fourth, fifth, sixth, sometimes podium place finishes,
mm,
which, like I keep saying, over the course of the season, it is going to add up. And if Merck keep doing that and Red Bull keep only having one consistently high point scorer, then I do see a world where Merck finished second in the constructors,
yeah,
whilst maybe not being the second best team on the grid, which, you know, that's what makes F1 fun. But yeah, George, like you said, had a good race. Maybe should have been in with a shot of the podium if his tyres didn't fall off a cliff. So maybe that's a little issue Merck have got to
mm,
look at. Kimmy points again for my star boy, which I'm always gonna big up. I mean, we don't talk about Bahrain because it happened too long ago. It's irrelevant now. Back in the points, he probably would have been disappointed with Bahrain, I think, because
yeah,
America are traditionally quite quick around there. I mean, his teammate got second, so that proves that finishing 11th would have been a bit annoying. But if it means Ollie Behrman gets a point, then so be it.
yeah,
But no, back up to sixth, you know, comfortably in the points. And those two just keep plugging away and getting points in the championship, which is all Merck can really ask for, because for me, they are the fourth quickest car on the grid. I do think McLaren, Red Bull, and Ferrari are quicker, despite that Red Bull being a boat at times. Um, but like I said, if they can consistently pick up points, if Russell can keep
mm,
getting, like, snatching those podiums and proving his worth
mm.
to make, then it should be a successful season for them. I'm going to interject and make my own topic. I
Go
want to
for
talk
it.
about Williams, because they had a brilliant race weekend. Again, they seem firmly back at the front of that midfield pack now,
Yeah,
which is good to see. Carlos and Alex getting 6 points combined, four for Carlos and two for Albon, who finished in ninth. And if I just get the qualifying up a second, yeah, Carlos actually qualified sixth, and Albon was 11th, so it was a good
mm,
recovery drive. It was a good drive from Alex, and maybe a slightly disappointing one for Carlos. But when you do have a Ferrari around you and quicker cars, I mean, Lando qualified 10th, so
yeah.
overall a pretty good race for them. Have you been impressed with just how quickly I think Williams have developed since James Vowles came in?
Yeah, I mean, they've been a bit of a revelation, to be honest. Albon has looked really good. I
Mm,
think he's had a couple of iffy races, iffy weekends. Like, he didn't qualify in the best position when Sainz qualified really well, but then he did make up for it, and he probably could have taken his teammate towards the end if
yeah,
if things worked out a little bit differently for him. I think, yeah, the thing for me with Williams, it was just waiting for Carlos Sainz to really turn up this season, and hopefully now he has, because I think with them two, they'll be firmly above Alpine, who, out of nowhere, really, it seems Gasly's just decided
yeah,
that he wants to take part the season too, and he qualified really well, and his race, unfortunately for him, got taken away far too early, because it would have been really interesting to see where he could have ended up um, at the weekend. But before we get to that, yeah, Williams, I think they're looking better than I expected. I thought that they would do well. They ended last season really well. Albon's really surprised me this year. Um, and maybe they're a team if things can just kind of fall into place for them that they might just find themselves being on a podium this season, and that would be amazing for them. All it really takes is a couple of drivers to just
Yeah,
not finish the race,
it's
and
like when a Alpine or an Aston Martin pick up a podium because something's
yeah,
gone up ahead. If Williams can be there to take advantage of that, that'd be
yeah,
brilliant. I mean, they've already got more points than they did the whole of last season, so if that doesn't prove how far they've come, then what does?
yeah. Well, exactly. And I mean, you were big on Albon before the season started. You must be impressed with how he's gone about this campaign so far.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Australia was a brilliant race. Really took advantage of the conditions to get fifth place, which surprised a lot of people. Didn't surprise me, haha, because I knew. And then ninth, the next race. Yes, I am looking at the race results. I don't know them off by heart. Ninth, the race after that, and then a slight dip in Bahrain in 12th, but then comfortably back in the points again with another ninth place in
Hmm.
Saudi Arabia. So he seems to be very comfortably able to just to sneak inside that top 10 even when he doesn't qualify there, which is
Yeah,
a full credit to him. And like you said on Carlos, he seems to be getting a bit more at grips with the car now. And as soon as he can get in full flow, we've seen what he can do. I remember back in his McLaren days when McLaren were really sort of on their surge up, how well he was able to deliver in that car, and then even in Ferrari,
hmm.
being the only driver to win a race in a year where every other race was won by a Red Bull. So
Yeah.
there's a really, really good driver in there, and if he can get fully to grips with this quite quick Williams car, like you said, there is an outside chance of a podium for either of them if things go wrong further up the field.
Yeah, and that would just be, like we said before, we all want to see Williams up there. They're one of the
Yeah,
historic teams as well, and they've been away for far too long now. I suppose the biggest disappointment for me this season has been Aston Martin, to be honest. From going from the pleasure of seeing how well Williams are doing, Aston Martin just look completely useless at times. Like Alonso's just not getting anything out of the car.
no,
And I think that really tells you all you need to know about the car because if Alonso has an opportunity, then he will take it. But finishing what, 9 seconds behind one of the Racing Bulls, only finished 12th because of Liam Lawson's 10-second penalty. They only finished in 11th, sorry. Really disappointing from Aston Martin when you were hoping that maybe you would have had a situation where it'd be Alpine and Williams and Aston Martin all competing for that mid-table, well, best of the rest kind of spot in mid-table, but it's just not going well for them this season, is it?
I do think, and I do completely agree. It's been a terrible start to the season for Aston Martin and for racing fans because Lance Stroll is currently
Mhm.
10th in the drivers' standings, which cannot stand. Um, but I do think Aston Martin have maybe done a hack and put all their eggs in the 2026
And yeah,
basket.
I think so too.
Which you know what, fair enough. I mean, as much of a bottomless pit of money Lawrence Stroll seems to have, he is being a bit smarter about it. There's talk of outside investment from Saudi Arabia,
Yeah,
which would see them join McLaren as being owned by a country. Obviously, McLaren's owned by Bahrain, so that could maybe ignite a little bit of a rivalry. I'm not too sure, but yeah, on Fernando, he's one of four drivers not to pick up any points this season. The other three being Lawson, Doohan, and Bortoletto, who are
hmm.
well minus Lawson, relative rookies on the grid this season. Which
Bortoleto expected as well, to be honest.
yeah, Bortoletto you wouldn't have expected to get any points. Doohan has more penalty points than actual points. Lawson had the opportunity to pick them up in a Red Bull,
Didn't.
didn't. So there's reasons for them, but you can't really find a reason for Fernando. Obviously, he had those two DNFs. Was it three DNFs in a row? In the first race, yeah, DNF in Australia, DNF in China. The only driver to DNF there. Yeah, so two
Mm.
DNFs in a row. And then he's just sort of been on the periphery of the points ever since. An 11th in Japan, 15th again in Bahrain, which links on to the point you were making of Aston Martin just aren't really anywhere near the
Yeah.
front of that midfield pack. And then another 11th in the race just gone in Saudi, pretty comfortably behind Hadjar in the Racing Bull. So yeah, you'd expect a lot more out of Fernando. He's
Mm.
been the kind of driver to sort of extract the maximum
Yeah.
performance out of a pretty terrible car. I mean, minus the McLaren days and the GP2 engine days, but even then, he was still getting points every now and again. And he just seems to, well, maybe it's not him. Probably definitely not him. It is definitely the car. He's just not able to consistently have
Mm.
pace to fight for points. It's sort of maybe a similar situation to a Ferrari, where they're not consistently good enough at every single race. Obviously, at different ends of the grid. I
Mm.
think Ferrari will comfortably get points every race. Whereas Aston Martin, like you said, maybe coming off the back of last season, you expected them to be at the front of that midfield pack, and it just sort of hasn't really happened that way. And there's not really a reason why as of yet.
Maybe it's just all one big grand design by Adrian Newey to get the most amount of wind tunnel
Wind
time.
tunnel time. Finish last in the
Um,
championship. There we go.
exactly. Yeah, because I saw a report the other day that said Adrian Newey is just not focused on this car at all. All his attention is on 2026, which I imagined it does make sense. Like that's the point you were making. What's the point in bringing Newey if you're not going to have him really full focused on the reg changes?
Yeah.
Which, yeah, does make sense because he couldn't have been there last season to impact this year's car. It's just one of those. You were just expecting, I think, Aston Martin to at least be up there in the top 10 every now and then. Nando getting some points, but it's just been a bit weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a little bit disappointing when Lance Stroll has all 10 of Aston Martin's points this season. Anywhere else you want to touch on? Isaac Hadjar is looking very strong.
Yeah.
Again.
His pace has really impressed me over the course of a weekend. And I think his confidence as well. He could have very easily, after Australia, where a helmet marker was a complete knob,
Yeah.
and it takes a strong person to sort of come back from that and defy what he said. And Hajar's been pretty consistently, in and around 10th, 11th, 12th. He got an
Mm,
8th in Japan, so he's picking up points pretty well. The RB was being joked around Japan as quicker than the Red Bull. I don't think
yeah.
that is the case, but they don't have a slow car.
No.
They're not a backmarker team, I don't think, and Lawson's still not delivered in the RB. He's always been around the bottom of the grid. Obviously, that 10-second penalty in Saudi sort of ruined his chances of any points, but beside that, he's never really been challenging for them. And Isaac's always been there picking up. We picked up a point in Saudi, um, just outside in 13th in Bahrain, and then an 8th in Japan. China again was 14th, so that, there's top 15 finishes pretty consistently there. When he's
Mm,
finished the race, which for a rookie driver and one who had a very eventful start to his career in F1, it is really nice to see. Sort of bedded into F1. He seems to get along well with everybody on the grid, which is
mm,
cool. And yeah,
yeah.
he just seems very happy, and you can't not like him. And when he's picking up points, it's nice to see.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Especially the point on Lawson. I didn't I didn't think he looked too bad in Saudi Arabia. He wasn't
No,
too
that was
far
his
off.
strongest race. Yeah, yeah,
That,
yeah.
but yeah, he would have been 11th without the penalty, which is still behind Hadjar. And coming up to Miami, Imola, and Monaco, now he probably does have to finish ahead of Hadjar on the next two of those three races, I think, because he just needs confidence now. He's obviously a driver that's got none at the minute, and I can completely understand why. You get put into a top team, it doesn't quite go well, you get dropped immediately. I mean, where are you meant to find confidence? But he's got to find it from somewhere, because he might come through halfway through the season. And who's that young fella that Red Bull have again in F2? I can't think of his name off the top of my head now, but they're really high on him. And Lawson might just find himself out of his seat, to be honest.
Not Bortoletto, is it?
No, not Bortoletto.
He's here now. Colapinto. They want Colapinto, don't they? Red Bull?
Maybe Colapinto, yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's driver options for Red Bull. Obviously, Colapinto is, currently waiting on the sidelines at the minute. But yeah, Lawson's going to have to find pace from somewhere. He's going to have to stop finishing ahead of Hadjar, because as much as I like Lawson, and I thought he got unfairly treated at Red Bull, he's going to have to do something, isn't he?
It's a cutthroat business, F1. We've seen it plenty of times, especially within the Red Bull sphere. So I hope for his sake his results pick up and he can get a few solid points and build his confidence up, because if it doesn't, it's not really looking good for his future F1 chances.
Yeah, no. We will leave it there, I think, today. We'll probably be back next week ahead of the Miami Grand Prix, where we'll give our predictions and so on. Thank you for listening. If you've got any comments, then please feel free. The F1 podcast would like to be more successful with them, I think it's fair to say, because we do like doing them. So if there's any ideas or suggestions, then please, let us know. But for watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We will be back later in the week to do an EFL look, as the season there is coming to an end. So we'll do that as a two-parter with the Championship, and then the League One and League Two separately. And maybe Liam will be a little bit happier next week.
I'll let you know on Saturday.
Yeah, well, afterwards, after the podcast anyway. But for now, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.